So I'm driving around my neighborhood and I've been seeing a lot of these types of structures. They are these rock pillars that people have out front of their driveways. Now, a lot of the ones around my area are very much homemade. There's nice ones, of course, and I could also say that these are nice, but they look like they were made on a weekend for the fun of it. So how do they go about doing this? Typically, classically, you're going to make a form and you're going to put some mortar on the rocks. You're going to stuff them in actually around the sides of the form, and then you're going to pour concrete maybe down the center, something like that. So I thought, how would I go about doing the same type of thing in Blender rather than stacking the rocks up one by one to try to get this structure? So what I wanted to try was, could I create a particle simulation, which we can do this in Blender, that emits rocks? So how about that? So I have a particle sim that's going to emit all these rocks right here. And then what I have to do is create another simulation after that, a rigid body simulation that takes the emitted rocks, the rocks that came out of from the particle system. There are a whole bunch of them, hundreds of them. And then you create a form. You take a form just like these ones right here, turn it upside down. So imagine that, you make a cup and you drop all the rocks in the cup. Now, after the rigid body sim is complete, the neat thing you can do in Blender is you can turn it all into its own model after that. So you get all the rocks in the form, then you can hide the form, essentially solidify the rocks, add the texture, and then export it out as an FBX to get it to Unreal Engine. So there's a handful of steps in the middle there. Like, for example, I have to make all the textures here for each one of these rocks. And, well, not for each one. There's 3 different types of rocks here, and they kind of repeat. You can't really tell. You can kind of tell that this one's different from this one, but they don't look exactly the same because they're rotated around. But you make a texture for each of the rocks, and then you have to bake it, because these are procedural textures. I'll show you that over here in Blender. So a procedural texture, this is Blender, you add your own math to the object. And so what I mean by that is this. We'll take a look at this real quick. So let's find this one right here. So this is rock 01, and it's using this texture. So what does this mean? I'm not going to talk about all this. I just want to give you kind of the rough idea. Right here, keep an eye on these rocks here. If I go to this item right here, noise texture, and I click on it, this is generating some noise across the surface of this object. So I can control that right here like this. Then what I do is I can create more contrast to this item by adding in this thing called a color ramp. So go here, it's the same noise, but I have enhanced it by increasing the contrast essentially. So I do that a bunch. Then I add in a roughness map to make it shiny and dark in certain areas. So right here, it's going to be a little bit more shiny where the dark is and a little bit more rough where the white is. Then I get to some of the interesting stuff where I come down here and you can see that this color ramp is a lot more contrasting, and that goes into this thing called a bump node, and that's going to make it bumpy. So when I go over to here, you see how it looks like it's got the bumps to it? That's the normal map. So you do all of that, but here's the thing. This is not a picture. This is math. So I need to get this out of here. So that means I have to bake it out. So the baking process just means that you're taking all of this information and you're turning it into an image. Now, in order to do that, the first thing I need to do is unwrap this. So this is one big mesh. So at one point in time, I turned all these little objects into one big mesh. Now imagine we just draw a bunch of seam lines all over here and we cut it all up when we lay it out flat. So then if I come over here to UV editing and I'll hit A, you can see that this over here is every single one of the meshes over here unwrapped. So if I were to zoom in, see there's a little bit of color here. So that's one of the rocks. There's one of the bluish rocks. And this right here is the concrete. So this particular map is what they call a diffuse map. That's the main color. So you would take this, bake this out. You would do another one for the normal, for the roughness, maybe ambient occlusion, possibly metallic. Then you can go back over to Unreal Engine and then you could import those textures in. The last thing you're going to do here though is you're going to export out the entire model as an FBX file. So over in Unreal Engine, you'll end up with an FBX file right here and all of your textures. And then about the last thing to do is to create your material and plug all your textures into the output node. Now you notice that on a couple of these, I've added a multiply node, and that's for the roughness and the ambient occlusion. And that way I can control the intensity of each one of those maps. So that's a look at what it entails to go from Blender to Unreal Engine entirely. No assets downloaded from the Fab Shop, no textures from Polyhaven, everything you made yourself. So if you can't find the asset you're looking for, as usual with most things that we do, making yourself might be the right answer.